everyday life, I'd want to answer a far more interesting question than, what are you doing? In 2008, I realized how badly I'd underestimated that question. What was I doing? I was writing for a series of websites that didn't mean anything to me on a personal level. I was trying to figure out how to be an independent, valuable part of society after years of crawling, 1 inch at a time, out of self-loathing and depression, an ascent that felt as knuckle-draggingly prolonged as been and available. The answers can seem so clear. Really. The real answer is that there are an infinite number of possibilities that we can explore to be happy, connected, engaged, and free. The simultaneous lack and abundance of answers is the answer. Tiny Buddha evolved from that idea, the prospect of exploring different possibilities and then doing something with them so we can learn for ourselves what's right for each of us. They say we teach what we need to learn, the wisdom, conventional or otherwise, that guides the decisions we make each day. What you'll get from this book. Nearly 1,000 people responded when I began asking life's hardest questions on Twitter, planning to create a collaborative book. As I read through their responses, I realized the answers fell into distinct categories of ideas. While there were occasionally responses that didn't parallel anyone else's, for the most part, the tweets grouped themselves into sections. I suspect that if I presented myself that way, I'd immediately convey my ignorance, because wisdom is a lifelong pursuit. I didn't write this book sitting at a cherry wood desk in my psychiatry office or in between personal development seminars I host around the globe. I wrote this from the shabby couch I bought on Craigslist while running a Twitter account and a website that appear to help a lot of people. I acknowledge my non-expert status not to undermine my ideas, but to remind you up front that we all own a rational one. Anger doesn't punish the people or circumstances that hurt us. It punishes us. And bitterness doesn't protect us from pain down the line. If anything, it invites it. Emotions are not resolutions, and yet we have to let ourselves feel them. Suppressing emotional pain more often than not just creates more of it. This is where it gets confusing. If we're not supposed to resist our feelings, how do we know when to let them go? How can we both allow which was kind of awesome in its darkness, now that I knew all my basic needs were met. It was like going backstage before a Broadway play, seeing the man-made framework behind the illusion of magic. In fact, it was very similar, since all kinds of people were gathering around musicians putting on impromptu shows. I struck up a conversation with the girl next to me, telling her how surprised I was that New Yorkers were so friendly and willing to lend a hand, even with their own needs to attend to. She said nothing changed, that I felt trapped within my offensive, unlovable skin. I called my aunt to complain about my misery. I had a roster of regular listeners who indulged my desperation. Not a few seconds into my woe is me story, she asked me, "Lori, how can you be thinking about yourself? Don't you know what's happening in the world?" I didn't have any idea. I turned on the television and saw the footage. They kept showing the towers going down, like sandcastles. I imagined that she cried, screamed, and wailed herself through lonesome, traumatic nights. I visualized her collapsing into the arms of people she loved, other survivors who understood. I wanted to take it all away. I wanted to save her from a suffering that I could only imagine ate away at her soul day and night. I wanted to be her Prozac. I wanted to make her numb to the reality of her losses. Then I realized that in that moment, she, in animal senses, it might be eaten and receives an increase in adrenaline, enabling escape. Humans also developed a fine-tuned fight-or-flight response to survive in a dangerous world. It originates in the amygdala, the part of the brain that creates fear conditioning. The only difference between us now and us then is that instead of being attacked by lions, as we may have been centuries ago, we're more likely to get in romantic squabbles or professional confrontations. More often than not, secretly hoping they wouldn't jeopardize my status as someone who always needed to be saved. Eventually, I'd crawl my way to the kitchen, where I'd lay with my cheek against the cool tile, nibbling on a saltine, feeling secure in the knowledge I had to feel only one knowable bodily pain. With such extreme physical weakness and the possibility of severe malnourishment, there was no need to think about anything else that hurt in my life. Nothing else was as dangerous and life-threatening. The weightiness